This is Garis book readings of my two published paper books. This is chapter 4, entitled Costs of the Nation-State System, taken from my second book, Multis and Monos. What the multicultured can teach the monocultured towards the creation of a global state. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is chapter 4, section 2, moving straight on. Now for a more personal example that happened to me in real life that reinforced my belief that monos suffer from their own customs. In 2001, I'd been a widower for a year and a half. I moved to a small Mormon town in the state of Utah in the US because I got a professor job there. My first female friend was a Mormon. That was before I knew much about what they believed. She was single. Her husband had left her for greener pastures. Once the relationship developed a bit, she said that her Mormon beliefs forbade her to have premarital sex. She didn't mind cuddling, so we would cuddle. One day as we were cuddling closely, her thighs grabbed closely around my thigh and she had an orgasm, probably the first one of such a kind in years. She got upset and told me the following weekend, when I saw her again, that she had rushed off to confess it to her Mormon bishop. The following weekend the same thing happened again, and this time she got very upset. It was obvious her body was hungry for orgasms, but her beliefs, her customs, got in the way of her getting any real sexual pleasure. Her no premarital sex custom would also probably lower the odds of her finding a steady boyfriend. She certainly had far fewer orgasms and suffered because of it. Since she lived in a town surrounded by like-minded people, she was not exposed very much to alternative views. So, for all I know, she continues to live the same existence, oblivious to what she could have had she been able to throw off some of her customs. After all, even most Catholics living in Italy ignore the Pope's teachings when they shouldn't be taking the pill. Italian women take the pill pretty much as readily as do other European women. In fact, the Italian birth rate is almost as bad as it is in Japan. That is catastrophically low, well below replacement rate, which is 2.1 children per couple. I'm convinced that when global media comes, and with it a global language, there's going to be a huge shake-up in the world's beliefs. Everything will be questioned, all beliefs will be vulnerable, and especially in the minds of the young, who are so open to new ideas anyway, because it is their role at that stage in their lives to learn to be effective adults. As more people become multis as a result, I hope my view that monos suffer from their adherence to stupid customs will become a widely held view. At the present time, however, in a world where the vast majority of people are still monos, living in monocultures, despite the early versions of the internet, and not speaking the world language, most people haven't a clue what I'm talking about. It's frustrating for me. No wonder multis prefer the company of other multis. Other multis will share the same view. E. Cultures of scale. This is a concept, a label that I use to show how people will benefit from living in a global culture, in a global state, and hence conversely will not benefit from if they continue to live in monocultures. I chose the term so that it sounded like economies of scale, which is the idea that the price of an individual item is less when many of them are made. By cultures of scale, I mean the idea that people will benefit by belonging to a global culture because it will be much bigger, and because it will be culturally homogeneous, it will by definition be essentially the same anywhere, that is, anywhere on the planet, due to a global media and a global language. A global culture will give its citizens the media of the whole planet. Ideas will fly around the world at the speed of light, and if they're expressed in the world language, they'll be able to compete with similar ideas from other sources. Really good or interesting ideas will be popular and outcompete other ideas. This is a two-edged sword, you may say. On the one hand, most ideas will not survive the global competition. We can talk about idea side, the mass killing of ideas. On the other hand, people will be exposed to the ideas of the whole planet rather than only to the ideas of their own nation state or near neighbours, and so be exposed to a greater, richer source of ideas. They will have their minds expanded by that exposure. But you might ask, as we do again in greater detail in chapter 10, would not the planet be culturally poorer if nearly everyone comes out of the same culturally homogeneous mould? My answer to this question is yes and no. Yes, if you count the number of ideas and cultures in the world before the idea side, but no, from the point of view of the individual. Before the rise of a global media, a global language, and a planet-wide cultural homogenization, each mono is limited by the limitations of the monoculture that programs him. Then, when the global state is formed, that individual is hugely expanded in his view of the world and made far more sophisticated. Admittedly, there will be billions like him, all exposed more or less to the same mind-influencing media sources from all over the planet, so that over time, the total range of ideas from the planet will go down, but the number of ideas in the heads of individuals will go up. Furthermore, the ideas that survive are in some sense the best, because they are the ones that win out in competition with many others. Now, of course, individual tastes and abilities differ. For example, I can't stand pop music. It's ephemeral noise to me, lacking the beauty and genius of time-tested classical music. I have zero interest in watching sports on TV and find the jabber of most ad-infested mass media utterly boring and intellectually demeaning. So the preoccupations of most people pass me below my intellectual radar. I'm actively disinterested in what they care about and prefer to live in my own ivory tower, in a manner of speaking. On the other hand, what interests me strongly is incomprehensible to most people, so we are doomed to not understanding each other. In brackets, I'm after all a triple professor, teaching and researching in pure mathematics, theoretical physics, and computer science at the time of writing, which was 2007. So despite the existence of a world media, there will still be a wide range of interests over a local population. But the point I'm making is that that distribution of interests will be much the same anywhere on Earth. Yes, tastes will vary. People differ in their genetic dispositions, but global tastes will tend not to be very different from region to region over the planet, I predict. After a century of global media, a global language and idea side, most people who've asked will probably agree with the idea that they would hugely prefer to be exposed to the world culture, the world media, than to have to revert to a monocultured existence, with a monocultured media, a monocultured language, and general monocultured ignorance and stupidity. Most of the world's citizens will admit that becoming multis, or even better, global citizens, globans, has definitely enriched their lives, and that this process is irreversible. Well, that's the end of a very short chapter 4, so I'll stop here. Ciao.